for being here today. I'm Curtis Hill, the prosecuting attorney, and I'm joined here by some friends of mine, and I'll introduce them. We've got Kendall, Parker, Griffin, Dante, Will, and Gavin. Everybody say hello.
Hi.
Hello. I'm here to talk to you today about an event that we're having on December 27, 2015 at the Concord High School. Teaming up with kids. And we're teaming up with law enforcement community, schools. It's a very important time to do so. These guys are going to be participating in 3-on-3 basketball tournaments. And there's more rules and registration information that we'll be providing for you to pass along. But we want the community to get involved in this because it's a fun activity for kids starting from grades 3 on up to adults. So we're hoping that we have lots of participation from folks who want to come and enjoy some 3-on-3 activity. But it's also an important message that we're sending to the community of engagement with children, with schools, with community, and with law enforcement. Certainly over the past several weeks we have seen a great deal of dialogue in our country regarding law enforcement and community and some of the confusing messages that are out there. And regardless of your position on these messages that exist, there are solutions to these problems, and they begin with children. They begin with combining youngsters in opportunities to engage and interact with law enforcement, who after all are there to protect all of us. And sometimes that's very misunderstood. So one of the things that we're doing, and I'm very happy to be supportive of the Concord Basketball Developmental League in this effort, is to make sure that those in this community understand the importance of law enforcement and what they do for us, and in understanding and engaging and participating with these folks. So I'm very excited about the program. It begins at 1 o'clock on December 27th. I'll be there to assist in providing some of the awards. I doubt very seriously if I'll be playing. My playing days are somewhat behind me. And even when I had my playing days, they probably weren't that impressive in the basketball court. But I think this will be a very fun activity, so I'm hopeful that we can get a lot of success from the community in joining us to be supportive of law enforcement. We'll have lots of law enforcement officers there. We hope to have their families there, and we want to encourage everyone in Elkhart County on December 27th, just a few days after Christmas, when you're coming down from the Christmas blues, like, well, what do we do now? Well, we can go to Concord High School and we can join. And this isn't just Concord schools. These are schools all over that are participating. It's going to be at Concord High School. But all schools are invited to participate, all kids in the community are invited to participate, and we can all come together as one community, backing law enforcement, backing each other, backing children, and moving towards an era where we have greater communication, greater understanding, and the happy life that we're supposed to have in this country. Thank you very much. I'll answer some questions.
How does it work? You said it's 3-on-3, but is it just the kids that play? How does the law enforcement play a role? Is it officers involved? Law
enforcement can be involved. I mean, we're encouraging law enforcement to be there to participate with their family, to really it's an opportunity to appreciate law enforcement. So we hope police officers and their families come just to acknowledge or be acknowledged that we're thanking them for the work they do. However, their kids can sign up and register. There are various age divisions, so we have grade school divisions, junior high, high school, and other, or adult divisions. So we could have some challenge matches between various law enforcement agencies. So there's all sorts of roles that they can play to participate and have some fun. And again, understand that the community is behind them. It is a very, very difficult job when you're in law enforcement. And I can't stress this enough. We ask these people to put it on the line for us. We train them on how to keep themselves safe and keep us safe. And one of the things that you have to understand, there seems to be this suggestion that if justice isn't perfect, then it's not just. And justice has never been perfect. It's the best that we can do. I can explain that here in this office. There are times when we have information that lets us know, well, we know this happened, but because we deal with rules of evidence, sometimes we're not able to seek justice in that sense because we have rules to go by. Police officers have rules to go by. And that sometimes is lost in the community in terms of what tough job it is when you have a situation that happens like that, and you've got to make some determinations on what you're going to do, what actions you're going to take. And sometimes those actions are the types of actions that suggest in your mind, okay, am I going to go home tonight? And that's in the mind of every police officer when they get up and go to work, and their families. Am I going to see dad or mom again? And we sometimes lose sight of that. We think it's an easy job. Very easy to sit back on Monday morning and take a look at what happened and say, well, they should have done this and they should have done that. But what I do when I look at those things is what they did reasonable under the circumstances? Because there's always options, but we look at whether those options were reasonable under the circumstances and take that into consideration, always recognizing that they are there to protect us first and foremost.
Will this be an annual event?
I'm sorry?
Will this be an annual event?
Yes, sir.
Will this be the first of several events, or?
That's my understanding. I'm a spokesperson for the event organizers, but I believe they have done this in the past, and the plan would be to continue this ongoing event.
And what can immediately be done to improve the relationship between law enforcement and the local community?
Well, immediately I think is understanding. What typically happens when you have people on two sides of an issue, they both spend so much time talking about their issues, they don't have any time to listen to the other side. And if both sides stop talking and listen to the other side to understand a little bit about the other's position, it might be helpful. In the cases that we've seen nationally, much of the rancor is based on a very legitimate historical mistrust of law enforcement in the black community. That is a fact. So let's not deny that fact. But having said that, we also have to look at the events that unfold and make sure that we're looking at the facts of what occurred and not just assuming that it may be a racism issue. It could be a criminal issue. So both sides have to slow down a little bit and have an opportunity to understand the other. The long-term solutions are clearly starting from the box before people grow up with animosities toward each other. It starts with kids at this level going to a basketball game and shooting hoops with a cop. It starts with a police officer getting out of a squad car and walking through a neighborhood and getting to know the folks. And that type of interaction. In this community, sometimes you hear, well, we don't like cops, they don't like cops. Believe me, good people in this community appreciate police officers because they understand that police officers are there to clean up their neighborhoods. And those are even some of the most troubled neighborhoods. And that's what they're there for. Take those people out of those neighborhoods and see what happens.
Are there any events planned in the future next to this basketball tournament where these sort of relations can be improved upon?
Well, I hope so. I think that this is the event we're here to talk about today, and I'm hoping. What's wonderful about this is this organization had come to me. This isn't my group. I'm just assisting. This organization came to me, and I'm happy to help. I would encourage others to continue a dialogue that's meant to be positive in that sense, not just throwing out old feelings and old, pre-thoughts of how people are, and really look down at the facts of what's occurring. That's the most important thing people can do.
Can you give us any examples, either from your own experience growing up or from other kids you've seen growing up, of how something like this, an event like this, can change a person's perspective on police and can change that?
Well, I think it's pretty natural. The bottom line is, most of us have experiences where we had thoughts about another or a situation that once we got into it a little deeper, we realized, well, I was wrong about that, or I was wrong about that person. Haven't you ever had a first impression of somebody and for whatever reason, maybe you heard something about them or you didn't like the way they looked and you thought, boy, I really don't care for that person at all. And then you got a little embarrassed once you knew the person, learned a little bit about them, understood that they were a lot like you, and then it's like, hey, things are good. And you sort of forget that narrow-minded viewpoint you once had. That's human nature. We are all subject to that. And the way to break that down is by engagement, by not standing in fear of knowing somebody else that may be a little bit different. There are people in all lines of work who don't get it right. But that's not to say that an entire industry is corrupt. We have to look at situations when they occur that are bad and handle them for that badness, but we don't need to read into them more than what exists. We need to look at facts when facts are available to us and not speculate when we do have facts available to us. And then we have to make decisions that make sense with the idea of trying to improve our lot in life.
Why hold this event given some of the unrest that's been happening in Ferguson and
Well, actually, this event was actually in the planning stages for several months by the CDBL. So there is no direct correlation between the event and anything that's been happening. Circumstances being what they are, it certainly makes a lot of sense of what's going on that we continue to make efforts to show law enforcement appreciation. But that was the goal before we had anything going on coming out of Ferguson from that standpoint, which recognizes that people in this community, this organization and people in this community already are thinking positively about how to improve the community, how to show appreciation for law enforcement so they understand that people are with them, and also how to make sure that people in the community can openly engage with law enforcement. They are our friends. They're here to help us. So it's not a direct correlation, but it's a happy coincidence from our standpoint that an event that we were already planning to have in December, right around the holidays to share, comes on the heels of so much angst and frustration and issues that are brewing in the country, so that we can do our part to get started right here and help spread that out, that there are better ways to communicate and more effective ways to communicate.
I know it's a complex issue, but that angst that you mentioned, can you explain to us a little bit more about what you think the problems are that we're dealing with as a whole? I know I was speaking to one of South Bend's councilmen the other day, and he was saying this was an issue of justice. It sounds like you think it maybe has a different angle to it.
Well, when you say it, what is the it we're talking about?
This national thing that we're dealing with.
Well, it's different for different people. I mean, what I find is sometimes people will talk about justice, and justice to them is what they want. So if I get what I want, then that's justice. But if I don't get what I want, then that's not justice. Well, that's not the true measure of justice. Justice is not always what you want, but justice is determined to be what you deserve from a fairness standpoint. And when you have, what we do in this country is we look at evidence, we look at information, and our system is continuing to grow. Certainly there have been mistakes in this country, right down to the founding fathers on up to today. But the beautiful thing about our Constitution is that the built-in process within that document to get past those mistakes and continue that pursuit of perfection continues to exist. There are decisions that we've seen in our courts and legislature that we look today and we say, how could that have been? But thank God for our Constitution and the foresight of our founding fathers to put this document forward that would have the expandability and flexibility to grow into a more perfect union that we were meant to be. So a matter of justice, it's a matter of what's right. It's a matter of understanding. As I indicated before, I certainly understand the historical perspective that many in the community have regarding law enforcement. And as I said before, well deserved. If you look back into the history of Black America, it's not pretty. There are events that we look back in today and we say, how could that be? And they were very real. We also have people who have lived through that. So if you're a particular age, not only is it something you've read about, you lived it. And it's been carried on generation to generation. So we do have to understand and recognize that there is that predisposition to have a mistrust or to believe that something bad happens, it's because of this and only this, because it's always been that. I'd like to believe that we have demonstrable evidence that we have moved forward in this country in many respects. That's not to say that we don't have other things to address, but our justice system is pretty solid. We hear criticism about what goes on in law enforcement and justice, but I can tell you that the violent crime rate's down 50% over the last 30 years. That's huge. That indicates that we're doing something correctly in the justice system, and what that means is that you have a small number of people who commit the vast amount of crime. And if you're able to manage those small numbers of people and move them along, that opens things up for the rest of us. Because what we want to have, the bottom line in criminal justice and law enforcement is we want these guys to be safe. We want them to be able to go out and shoot hoops in their neighborhood, walk in the street, go to school safely. That's it. There's nothing really special beyond that. You want to be able to go shopping and not be accosted. Simple stuff. And if people would all just say, well, I won't do that, we wouldn't need law enforcement. But unfortunately, we sometimes have people who are selfish, who are motivated by other means, and we need to have police officers, prosecutors, judges, to be able to hold people accountable for their behavior until they're able to do it for themselves.
So let me ask you, and it's the last thing I'm really curious about. Nationally, do you think we need some kind of policy changes in the criminal justice system and in law enforcement protocol? Or do you think we would be better off with events like this, where we start at a grassroots level with kids, kind of showing them that the police, 99.9% of them, are there to protect them?
Well, my answer to you is probably pretty obvious, because what we need are more events like this that start at the grassroots level, where we begin communications. It's very easy to start doing a knee-jerk reaction and suggesting huge and significant policy changes on particular events. And I think that is problematic at the least. Our system is in pretty good shape. And as I said, you're not always going to agree with a decision of a grand jury or the decision of a prosecutor or the decision of a judge. That's okay. Nobody said you had to. There's disagreement all the time. We look at the total picture of what's out there, and the system is designed to be blind on justice. I'm not going to have a grand jury and suggest that it's fair to then say, well, we have a black person who's on grand jury. Let's get a black grand jury to review that so we can interject race into it. Is that the standard we want to start going to? Or do we want to simply believe in what this country is supposed to be about, which is justice for all, regardless of their background? It may take a while to get to that point, but that has to be our goal. We can't go retro on this and try to engineer how we're going to get along. So absolutely, policy changes, our policies are fine. Are they perfect? No, but they move in that direction, and the guiding post there is fair justice for all. Where we have to begin our processes are at home, in how we conduct ourselves at home, how we teach our children, how we send them out to the door, what we do in our schools, how we prepare them for a better life, how we teach them about character, respect for others, respect for themselves, how to address and deal with issues of law enforcement when confronted with law enforcement. If we take care of all of those types of things in the front door, we have a whole lot less problems coming in the back door.
So you mentioned that obviously some of these policies are not perfect, and it would be a knee-jerk reaction to actually following all these national events. So right now the first step is communication, but what comes after that?
Communication and understanding, and looking at real data effects. I mean, we have a country where all sorts of things go on a daily basis, and yet we have a handful of events because of our 24/7 news cycles that focus in like this is the only event that ever happened like this. Well, no, there's been other events that have happened. There are going to be new events going forward. Are we going to start there, look at every time something happens that we think should have happened differently and say, oh, there needs to be a policy change? Particularly when we have what I have found in the Ferguson situation, where a lot of people have opinions about what didn't happen, who have not taken the time to understand the results of the grand jury. What the prosecutor in St. Louis took a very solid step in holding a press conference and outlining the actual facts that were in that case. And to this day, there still are people who are making their assessments without regard to what the facts suggested. So we communicate, yes, but if we're just going to communicate and not understand, that doesn't get us anywhere. So then we try to understand, and once we understand, we move forward to deliberate engagement, to participating with each other, to being involved, so we become one people. Anything else? Well, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of my friends here, I appreciate your coming up. I would ask that each of you do your best to promote the event on your various media outlets. That's really what we're here about, to see if we can get people to this event, to have some fun, and to continue that message about what it takes to be a strong community, to get past issues that sometimes bring communities down. We don't want this community to be brought down, and we would like this to be the place where the conversation begins to elevate and expand out to the rest of the state and the rest of this country. Thank you very much for your participation. So thank you guys.
Thank you.